Hello and welcome everyone to ThursdAI. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with weights and biases, and you're on ThursdAI for March 20th today. And with me, my co-hosts here, Wolfram and Nistan. Welcome, folks. Hey, Wolfram, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing great. Great week, great day.
I'm
How are you,
excited.
man?
There's a bunch of open source stuff to talk about. Welcome everybody who listens and tunes into the show. ThursdAI is your latest and greatest news about what happened in the AI last week. And we're here to talk about multiple things today. There's a bunch of open source. There is an OpenAI live stream that's happening at 10 a.m. Pacific, which is in an hour and a half. We are obviously going to restream this. I know what it's about, and I'm going to tell you. I got a little bit of a sneak peek interest in it, and it's so dope. Besides this, though, we have other breaking news here soon to come as well. I'm not going to tell you what those are about. You have to stick around with us. I just want to mention for folks who are joining us for the first time that last week we celebrated 2 years of the live stream. That was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I like the outpour of love that people said, and like congratulations that people sent me. It was awesome to see. It's just getting started. The speed with which the AI models are releasing is ever increasing. We have a bunch of guests as well, so I'm very, very excited to tell you about all these things. And I think it's time for like a quick TLDR of everything we're going to talk about, because I guess that's how we start the show. So let me just share this with folks who are watching, but folks who are not watching, you can just tune in. Basically, we started the show with a TLDR. I had some feedback from folks who are like, hey, don't tell us about what you're going to talk about, just talk about this. And I disagree. I disagree because we are here for 2 hours. Not many people have 2 hours to sit on a Thursday. Many people just want to know what's going on. And then if interest peaks and they want to just stay with us. So I disagree, but I appreciate the feedback. So let's do the open source TLDR section. So in the open source, we have a great release from Mistral. Folks, Mistral is back with open source. Let's go. Applause. Yeah, let's go, Mistral. We're very much welcoming back to the stage Mistral's models with an Apache 2 license. They're multimodal. Mistral Small 3.1, 24 billion parameters that fits on a single GPU, I guess, was released. Wolfram, you played with this. I'm assuming we're going to chat about Mistral coming back to the land of open source. A very interesting release from the fridge maker, LG, that makes great fridges. By the way, my screen here, my monitor here is also an LG monitor. They have an AI side, apparently. I didn't know about this. And they released a new LLM called Exa1. It's a thinker also. So Exa1 deep 32 billion parameter thinking model. I actually had a chance to test it. It was released from LG, from all places. So we have like a new entry to the stage of LLMs. It's very interesting. ByteDance released something called DAPO, DAPO, which apparently is better than GRPO that DeepSeek released, which is a RL training method, really reinforcement learning training method. That's going to be very interesting to look through. And then, folks, finally, we got some open source from NVIDIA. For the second time, NVIDIA drops, because GTC happened this week, NVIDIA finally drops Llama Nemotron. They dropped Nemotron Super and Nemotron Nano, and we've been talking about these models from the last time that Jensen was on stage, and now Jensen was on stage again, and now they actually dropped the models. The models look pretty good, so we're going to chat about them as well. I invited NVIDIA friends, but a formal request to the NVIDIA PR department. We love NVIDIA. We absolutely love NVIDIA, all of us. Please let your folks come to the show, okay? That's all I say. But I did request some folks to come to the show, and hopefully the PR department will understand that promoting their stuff on ThursdAI is a good idea. In the big companies, it seemed quiet this week. It looks like nobody wanted to step on the toes of Jensen's performance, but Google released a few things that are interesting. In the Gemini app, Google released deep research for free. Now everybody can access deep research, which is great. They also released Canvas, which is super cool. You can now build apps within Gemini and actually see them. So we're going to chat about this. And also they have a bunch of other stuff to mention. Not to mention that last week, we told you about the native image output of Gemini, and it's been blowing up all over my timeline. It's incredible if you haven't tested it out. OpenAI just yesterday decided to say, hey, remember that pro tier level of a model that we have with like extra compute? We're going to make this available in the API for oligarchs only, because it costs a ridiculous amount of money. OpenAI makes O1 Pro, which is not a model, which is something else. We try to understand what exactly this is, but not a different model. It's O1, but like with probably a lot more compute and resources. They make this available in the API, and it costs $600 per 1 million tokens. $600 for outputs, for 1 million tokens outputs. If you code with this, if you vibe code with this, you better already have VCs backing your startup because it's ridiculously expensive. But hey, maybe some people want it. Definitely some people ask for it. It's way easier to use repo prompt and just go to OpenAI Pro for $200 a month. We have a quick NVIDIA GTC recap that I hope we will test out. We're moving on to vision and video. Step Fun, a company that already gave us like a great model for video, they released their image to video model, upgraded from their text to video model. Looks pretty good. They claim state of the art, but it looks pretty good. Just a breaking news announcement. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. So the breaking news that we have just before starting the show is that OpenAI's live stream is going to go live at 10 a.m. And the only thing that we can talk about publicly right now is because they released a tweet. And in that tweet, there's a video. In that video, there's a voice that says, live stream at 10 a.m. Very empathetically, I don't know. So there's going to be a live stream at 10 a.m. We're going to restream this, folks, so you don't have to miss anything. You can be on ThursdAI and also enjoy OpenAI's releases. Though I will say, they tend to go long. So sometimes they have to announce like one thing, and then they're like, oh, let's talk about this for 15 minutes. We don't have that much time on the show to give them 15 minutes. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But I will tell you, given that I had a little bit of a preview of what's going on in this live stream, I already have queued up a guest who's going to come and talk to us about the implications of what they're going to release. So that's a little sneak peek for you. I'm very excited to be able to have this because the more time we're here on the show, the more kind of we get to see a little bit before. And I love this. And also for everybody who's listening, we respect embargo with a strict respect. And so if you were to give us some news, we will only talk about this when it's public. Speaking of public, in the vision and video category, we will have another breaking news with another guest, very, very interesting guest this week. Also in voice and audio, and I think Wolfram, you had a chance to test this out. A company called Canopy Labs, I've never talked about on the show before, never heard about on the show before, released Orpheus 3B. It's a natural sounding speech language model. It's not just a TTS, it's an actual model that's built, I think, on Llama 3.1 or 3.3, and they trained like a TTS into that thing, so you can actually ask it for directions, you can ask it for a bunch of stuff. It's 3 billion parameters, and they're going to release the tiniest version soon as well. It has zero-shot voice cloning, which I tried to run, and CUDA ran out of memory for me, but this is so cool. This is like a state-of-the-art TTS language model, basically, that you can prompt to talk to you in multiple things. And just before the show, NVIDIA open sourced Canary, which is a 1 billion parameter and 180 million parameter speech recognition and translation. So basically like Whisper competitor that takes like number 2 on the speech arena based on vibe of our friend from Hugging Face. So a lot of news in the voice and audio, a lot of news, including some upcoming news very soon. I want to talk about this segment. We don't usually cover AI art diffusion in 3D, but folks, this week we're going to cover this. Tencent released Hunyuan 3D. Do you guys remember Tencent? Of course you remember Tencent. One of the best performing video models right now is Hunyuan Video. And they have been just on a tear of releases lately. And this is also, I believe, open source. And Hunyuan 3D version 2 is an absolute state-of-the-art 3D model right now. Not only that, they released a 3D multi-view, which basically, if you imagine, we're going to cover this, but basically a state-of-the-art 3D model, let's skip over the details in the TLDR, is coming at us from Hunyuan 3D. NVIDIA also released something called Cosmos Transfer. They dropped a conditional world generation with adaptive multimodal control. It's a mouthful, and we'll see if it's going to be interesting to talk about. And I think we're coming up on the end of our TLDR. And in the tools section, we have our friends from RC, ARCEE. Our friends from RC did like a bunch of fine tunes, did merge kit, did like a bunch of great stuff, our friends from over there. And we'll have Lucas on, hopefully, to talk about their Conductor. Conductor is a new release from RC that is a model router, routing your requests to different places. So that's going to be awesome. And then also in tools, Cursor shipped something called Claude 3.7 Max that many people were concerned is like a new model, but it's basically just like unlimited Cursor 3.7 with a bunch of reasoning tokens. Notebook LM is about to release a new feature called Mind Maps, which I find super, super cool. You just upload a bunch of stuff and it'll just create mind maps for you. You'll be able to create your own now. And the one of the funnest things that I've seen this week is using Gemini code drawing, which is basically using the Gemini image output native features, and you can just draw with it together. And we're gonna play around with this. It's super cool. I think that's it for the TLDR, folks. That's a busy week for AI this week. Busy week. There's a bunch of stuff. Not to mention that nobody wanted to go live because GTC. Nobody wanted to outstand Jensen. I will just ask super quick, folks. How are you feeling about this week in AI? Let's get started, or am I missing anything? Nistin, Wolfram, and also folks who are listening to us, please feel free to leave me a comment about what we just released. And yeah, we have some comments already, but if you have anything that we haven't mentioned in the TLDR, please add a comment. We'll absolutely get to it as well.
Really exciting now that we have a lot of cool local models. I have had so much difficulty choosing which one to run. We had Sandra on the show. That was actually breaking news when she introduced us to the new Cohere Command R model.
Yeah.
So that is excellent. And Gemma 3, we had Gemma 3, and now we have Mistral, which we will cover soon. It's very hard to choose, and they are all great.
Command A, since Sandra was on the show and we announced it as breaking news almost entirely on the show, Command A went on LM Arena and got like a very decent score. So everything we talked about was great. And yeah, I think it's about this. Nista, anything I missed, or we're good?
I got retweeted by Aiden, the CEO.
Aiden, CEO of Cohere.
It was about what we talked about last week, because you do want to use the Cohere models to do, especially for data gen work, if you want to get some other distribution that doesn't sound like Sonnet or GPT-4. If you're doing data work, you want to get some better distribution, and Cohere is pretty amazing for that because they do all their own data and stuff. Like, they don't actually use other models. But yeah, there's a lot of things to play around with. Yeah.
So, folks, I think we're going to start with our favorite corner that we always love. It's going to be open source AI. Let's go. Open source AI. Let's get it started. I feel like I need to upgrade that with a little bit more excitement. It felt a little bit like, let's get it started. And it needs to be, let's get it started. All right, folks, so we're jumping right in. And the first thing that we have to talk about is Mistral's new small. I gotta be very frank. The definition of small to me is like very interesting. But Mistral Small is a 24 billion parameter model. Mistral Small, we already had Mistral Small, and this one has a bunch of cool things about it. First of all, they love this triangle on the left. For GPK Diamond, for example, they're showing in the realm of the similar model sizes, they're showing an absolutely great performance compared to Gemma 27, Gemma 3 that we talked about. It's a little bit larger than Gemma 3, but still. Same-ish area. They also throw GPT-4o Mini and Claude 3.5 Haiku to there. Mistral Small is 24 billion parameters and gets very high results on very interesting benchmarks like GPK Diamond, GPK Main. They're beating Cohere's Aya Vision and Gemma 3 and GPT-4o Mini. Wolfram, you had a chance to play with Mistral a little bit?
Yeah, I even did the MLU Pro CS tests I regularly do. And yeah, it beats Gemma 3. Which is a bit bigger because Gemma 3 is 27B and this is 24B. That is better. Also noticed that in German it's a little better, and in general, I think I like it a little better, but it's very close. And Gemma 3 was really a great release. So that's the AI scene we are in right now, where a week later you already have some new toys to play with, and it's so far back. They are both great, and I personally like the Mistral Small a little more, and it's Apache 2 licensed and multilingual, multimodal, which is actually a bit a drawback compared to Gemma, because the Google people made sure that the visual stuff already works in Llama CPP, or at least in Ollama, which is not the case here. I could not test the visual stuff with this model yet. But the text generation, excellent.
Text generation is excellent. On the multimodal instruct benchmarks, they're getting on Math Vista, they're beating Gemma a little bit. I think they're coming very close on MMMU. and MMMU Pro, it looks like they're very, very close to Gemma. Every other model is basically that they chose to compare to, right? Obviously, we know and love Mistral, but also the usual meme that we have for Mistral folks is like, where's Kwindla? Where's this? Where's that? Where's this? Where's that? This is the usual meme for Mistral, but hey, whatever you guys chose to do, if you choose to give us Apache 2 models that are multimodal, we're not going to say no. We're going to be celebrating this, absolutely. So shout out to Mistral folks.
It's a small model, and you can run it on 48 gigabyte of VRAM, but I think you can run it on 24, and it beats the Mistral large model when you compare the quants that fit in the VRAM. So for me, I would rather run in my systems the small model in less quantized than the highly quantized large model. So it's really, really good.
Yeah. Long context as well. How much context do we have here? They say long context by...
And 28K.
128K context. We're just there, folks. We're just there. We're in the realm of like, this is most of what you need probably for most day to day, unless you go like crazy amounts. 128K tokens. I still like, yeah, like last week we reminisced about jumping from 4K to 8K and celebrating this, and I still remember this. It was like we celebrated Llama 2, I think it was, right, from 4K to 8K jump with rope.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, 8K is so much context, folks. 128K is pretty much all you need for regular use. I don't think you need like way more unless you have. It's pretty much hard to scrape all of this. Listen, how much was the JFK release? I think you posted like it's like 2 million tokens.
Yeah, 1.8 million tokens. So it actually fits into Gemini Pro, all of it. You can just dump it in there, and then you can.
That's insane. Years of records, and they fit into like a context window of Gemini Pro. And if you take segments of them, you can run them locally with Mistral. This is me trying to bring back the conversation. But basically, unless you have 50 years of JFK records of 2 million tokens, this model is pretty much all you need with 128. It's insane.
So I think most people running it locally will go to 32K, for example, because the quality also degrades if you go beyond that. But it's already great that you can go that far and you have the option to go even further when you need it.
I think usually Mistral is very good at longer context answers as well. I've noticed this to be quite consistent with them since the Mistral Large 1, one of the very first models. They've always been. Now, I haven't tested this one, but I've tested every other Mistral model, and they've been very good at stuff like rewrite this whole code base of 50,000 tokens, but remove these comments or just add more comments. It will actually do that. It's quite a workhorse of a model for that. So I would advise the people actually test it if it works for them, because the models do have very particular abilities in different jobs. So if you're going to use it where you want something consistent, where you have, I don't know, pieces of 50,000 tokens or 100,000 tokens of code or whatever it may be, and you want that rewritten in a certain way, and you want it to do it reliably, the Mistral models do tend to be best at that job, I've found out, amongst other things. So yeah, you should test that for yourself if that's what you're doing.
One thing we should absolutely discuss is that Mistral is releasing the base model as well. For the fine-tuning community, the base model is very important because they want to do their own stuff compared to their instruction following and do like all kinds of DPO, whatever. Our friends from all around the fine-tuning community are very, very happy about this. Folks, Apache 2 with base, Mistral is back, basically. Let's call it. Mistral is back, beating Gemma from Google just a week after Gemma released. This is an incredible release from Mistral, folks. Again, applause to our friends from Mistral.
And it's less censored, actually. I tested both with the same prompts, and Mistral is more compliant.
That's awesome. Applause to Mistral. As we move forward, you can try this model on their Le Plateforme. I don't know how to pronounce this. Sorry, I don't speak French. But you can try this on the platform called Le Plateforme. The model is also on Google Vertex and soon available via NVIDIA NIM, which is their like NVIDIA inference modules. I believe that's the thing. Maybe not. And everywhere. Basically everywhere. They mentioned, I want to shout out this. They mentioned our friends from News Research. They mentioned Deep Hermes 24B because that was the base of Mistral Small 3. And I'm pretty much assuming that like the folks at News are already cooking like with this model because it's significantly better. And this has basically inspired them to release the base and instruct versions. So folks from the community, thank you for News Research to inspire Mistral to release, and thank you Mistral for releasing the base model. I think that's pretty much all, folks. We are moving forward because we have a busy show. Let's talk about the refrigerator in the room. I think I have endless puns on this topic, folks, because I think I have an LG. Like I think I actually have an LG fridge. LG's a LG Research, which is an arm. LG is a huge company, of course. I'm making jokes. They don't only make refrigerators, also washing machines, also.
Probably
Yes.
as well.
Yeah,
We're
probably
gonna see.
tanks as well. They have a research, LG Research.ai. They have publications here. There are a bunch of stuff, folks. There's like a serious folks working in there. It's a huge company. So please, if you're listening, tuning into us from LG, please forgive our jokes. We're just having fun. They released a deep model, like an LLM that's reasoning. I don't actually believe that it's a fine tune of anything. I haven't seen. It could be, but as far as I saw on Hugging Face, and Hugging Face does a really good job of showing you where it's like fine tuned from. The base model is this model. So I haven't seen any evidence of this being like a fine tune of anything else. It feels like they trained the foundational model, which is very welcome and new. So LG released EXA-1 Deep 32 billion parameters. EXA-1 Deep exhibits superior capabilities in various reasoning tasks. They all say this. This is literally like the copy pasta for everything. But basically, it's super cool. They also have small ones, EXA-1 Deep 2.4B and 7.8 billion parameters. We can look at let's start to look at the...
That's great for speculative decoding because they can generate so many tokens. If you have a smaller one for speculative decoding, you get a lot of processing speed.
Yes. And I have LM Studio to pull up because that's exactly what I did. And for folks who are interested in my full review, blind review with EXA-1, you can see it on YouTube. I'll add this to the show notes. I'm not going to repeat this. But basically, I tried to get EXA-1 Deep with speculative decoding. I loaded the EXA-1 model here. So, Wolfram, you're absolutely right. It's great. For folks who don't follow us as closely, speculative decoding is a way to use a smaller model of the same bigger model to speculate about where the bigger model is going to go next. And if the speculation is correct, then the bigger model doesn't have to generate those tokens, significantly speeding up the inference, sometimes up to like almost like 20-30%, and even more depending on the temperature. And this actually is and LM Studio supports this. Shout out to Gil and LM Studio. LM Studio is absolutely the best way to test out local models. Shout out all our friends as well, and obviously GGML. But like LM Studio visually for folks is the easiest way to download and play with these models. And I've used this model and I tested it on the Beth Tries Ice Cream challenge or question that we have. And I just want to show you that I gave up. Wolfram, I don't know how to show only the chat. Let me just remove this. So basically, this is my question. Beth places whole ice cubes in a frying pan. You guys, those of you who follow the ThursdAI know this question. It's a question made to trick models to start doing math when in fact they don't need to. They just need to reason about some stuff. Reasoning models tend to go haywire about this question, try to rethink and overthink, etc. Because they're trained with like, oh wait, oh, let me see. Like all these like things in the middle, they trained on chain of thought. This model went deep. When they mean EXA-1 Deep, it went deep. It started going off the rails. And I don't know if that's an artifact of quantization because some tokens here look weird. Honestly, they look weird. I chose the default quantized version, so I don't remember exactly which one this was, but I believe like Q4 maybe. Yeah, Q4 KM. And then didn't see like too much quantities. I don't know. But maybe efforts quantization, maybe templates. But if not, this model just wouldn't stop. It would just like kept thinking, and would go back and forth until such point where the tokens that it think did not make sense to me. So while I was doing this, and you can see all of this on YouTube, this is my test for EXA-1. I also fired up our friend's QWQ, which is a 32 parameters.
Yeah, 32B.
32B. And that one also went hard, but it solved the problem. Literally solved the problem. It took a while. It took like 5,000 tokens, but it solved the problem. It ended. DeepSeek R1. Why am I mentioning both these models in comparison to EXA-1? Because when EXA-1 released their stuff, they basically compared themselves to DeepSeek R1. And let me see, actually, they compared themselves to DeepSeek R1 and QWQ, and they said they're doing better on multiple things like AIME and AIME 2025, competition math. Now, could be the result of quantization. This could be, absolutely. Like, folks, when you download quantized models, you don't actually get the same performance as the companies that release the evals. But listen, I also saw you saying that this could potentially be like a leaderboard chasing a little bit. And that's how it felt to me. if quantization had that much, didn't have that much effect. What do you guys think about these models? Did you have a chance to take a look at it? The vibes on local llama anywhere?
This one I didn't really check out yet, but that could be a prompt format thing. Sometimes the tokenizer is not the right one. I had that with another model on LM Studio, which, by the way, I'm a convert. After last show, I got into LM Studio and I'm using it now too.
Let's go. Let's go. I will say, everything that I said right now is my personal experience. This model could be dope, and this could be a quantization version. So until we get folks who are like fully testing this on GPUs, and soon, hopefully, I'll also have access to a bunch of GPUs to test a bunch of stuff. We'll see. We'll see how that unfolds. But until such a point, this model runs on local on the machine, quantized. So everything I said should be taken with a grain of salt. Folks from LG, shout out to you releasing the model. The license, I believe, is a specific license. By the way, they provided the pre-quantized versions by themselves with AWQ and GGUF. So I downloaded like the official ones. But they have like usage guidelines with reasoning. So it could be just like a token thing. So if Yegil from LM Studio is listening to us, we should have LM Studio update with like the proper things.
By the way, that's a great point, because no matter how good the benchmarks look, you always have to test the model the way you run it on your own systems, because it doesn't help if it's in theory perfect, but on your own, that quant you are using, if it's not working, doesn't help. You have to test it yourself in the end.
Yep. And so additionally, the model is licensed under XO1 model license agreement, because it's a huge company. It's a non-commercial license. It's NC. So you can play with it, you can research, but you cannot use it in production. I think we are moving on, folks. Let's move on. We are moving on because a busy show. Where's my notes? There we go. Okay, let's talk about Nemotron. Nistan, we talked about Nemotron multiple times before. At some points, we were like, hey, was that just an announcement or the model dropped? I think last time Jensen was on stage with his like leather jacket, I believe this was maybe January that we talked about this, that he showed up somewhere and Nemotron did not release. Actually, in our green room chat, I asked like, folks, was there a release that I missed? And no, there was just an announcement. But finally, NVIDIA drops Llama Nemotron, and they drop a nano version, which is 8 billion parameter, a super version, 49 billion parameter, and Ultra is coming soon. 253 billion parameter model that's distilled from 405B. So these Nemotron models are essentially distillation and pruned versions. If I remember correctly, they also talked about pruning in their kind of papers as well. Essentially, those are like distilled and pruned versions of Llama, I believe 3.3, I would assume.
Yeah. If you look in the config.json of the model, you notice something. Remember how they acquired DeskCLM?
Yep.
Which some of us were upset about, because they were doing some pretty cutting edge research as a company earlier on. So now you see is DeskCLM for casual LM. So it was that team that made this one. So this is from a different team from NVIDIA, not the first one. And you can see they stacked a whole bunch of tricks. So what I think they did is, first they did the distillation to the 70B. I'm just guessing here as to how I would do it. And then they did the pruning to 49B. And then I think they either kept distilling or kept training. I haven't read the actual report. That looks like cloud diagrams. It looks nice, but yeah. So yeah, that's why this one's probably worth looking at, especially if it's the DESI team that made it at NVIDIA. Like this might, yeah.
So they have a bunch of details in this blog, and shout out to Chris Alexiuk, our friend, for authoring and working on this blog as well. Shout out to Chris. There's a bunch of details here. So Nano, 8 billion parameters distilled from 3.1. So Llama 3.1. Super is distilled from Llama 3.3. So very interesting. Super is 49 billion parameters coming from a 70 billion parameter model, and it gets very good results as well. And this model also supports test time scaling. So that's super, super cool. These models are reasoners, folks. It sounds like we need to make sure to like mention this all the time, but these models are also reasoners. So Llama is not a reasoner model. We're waiting for Llama 4 to drop, and I'd assume that Llama team will not skip the test time compute paradigm. I would assume, I have no knowledge about this, but they not only fine-tuned and distilled this model, they added reasoning to this model. They distilled it through their NAS architecture, not neural architecture search and knowledge distillation. So they have like a paper about this as well. They did supervised fine-tuning with 60 billion tokens. And the way to enable this, let me see if I can find this. The way to enable this reasoning is super cool. It's very similar to how News Research did this. When you go to the model in the system prompt, let me find the right thing. In the system prompt, you just say, in the system prompt, you're like detailed thinking on and detailed thinking off. This in the system prompt makes the model to reason or not reason. And folks, we've been talking about this for a while, and OpenAI actually confirmed this as well for them. The paradigm is convergence towards models that can think when you need them to and don't think when you don't need them to. So this is a great example of where things are going. Wolfram, any thoughts on this model?
I did not do the benchmark, but I did vibe check it. So I can say it's a Nemotron. If you know the Nemotron models, they are very different from the normal chat models because they feel like a call menu where they give you options and you can choose one. Even if you just chat with it, it gives you options what you could say and stuff like that. That is very different from the normal chat models. And if you use LM Studio, there has been a Ginger template error in the model, which is in the community notes for the GTOF version. Not this one, because that is the official one, but the other one. There you need to fix it. Otherwise, it keeps going and never stop thinking. This is what I had.
Oh, so maybe that's what happened to me
maybe
also with the LG model.
Could be that it is the same there.
Interesting.
But so definitely check that and fix it.
shout out to our friend Bartowski calling guilty for quantizing. I just want to shout out Colin for a second. Can we do that? It's incredible that if you go to LM Studio community and Bartowski, there's always a quantized version for you to run on your local machines, because folks like Bartowski, other folks for MLX like Prince Kanuma, just doing incredible community work, and we have to celebrate them as well. So shout out to those folks. Let me actually do a little bit of we really appreciate all of us, because then when we test, it's easier for us to test. And I don't got time for this.
He basically took over from the blog.
Yep. We remember the blog from a year ago that disappeared, and then Colin absolutely took over. So shout out. We really appreciate your support to the community. Nistan, you want to add something?
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth, like direct back and forth that goes on in the community to get the quants right. So the CEO of LM Studio will be there. I've talked to Colin several times. If you use the KL, like the large quants, those leave the beginning and the end of the model at 8-bit, and that often actually corrects some big missteps. So I always recommend to use the Q4KL, the large ones with the quants from Colin. And I think he's the only one that does that way, him and me. So yeah, there's but an insane amount of work from him. And the other person whom we don't know is Mr. Adenbacher, who's also posting a lot. And yeah, if it wasn't for those two and Hugging Face's AWS bill, it would be, we would not be having as much fun with these models.
So the only one last thing that I want to go back to a little bit. So yeah, absolutely, shout out to those folks. I want to go back to the Nemotron models super quick. It fits on a single H200, and they focused on this. And I hear from our friend Chris that FP8 is coming very soon, and it says on model card as well. And once FP8 comes, this single model will fit on the 49B, will fit on a single H100. Which is so dope, folks. This is like a big model. This is the still of Llama 3.3, and this will just like show up and like be able to run on a single H100. So that's absolutely super cool.
Also, 66 GPQA on with reasoning on for a model that quantized. I'm interested to actually test GPQA quantized on this one, but 66 is pretty good, and 50 to start off as stock is actually pretty good, considering even the best models like the 72Bs from last year only got up to like 45, 46. Oh. So considering, yeah, it's just pretty good. Looks
So
pretty
shout
good.
out to NVIDIA. We waited for these models and we are very, very happy that you guys finally released them. So folks who are interested, there's a blog post that we'll add to the show notes about the technical, how they did this accuracy above Llama, including, this is a distilled version that gets like higher accuracy than Llama. So super, super cool. Shout out to folks. They also, one last thing that I'll say here, they also released the dataset, which is not common, folks, not common. And we need to celebrate this every time this happens. There is Llama Nemotron post-training dataset V1 with, this is only the first 5 gigs. This is, I don't even see how much. Oh, 4 million rows of data. That's crazy. Wait, no, sorry. 50 million rows. 4 million is just the first 5 gigabytes. So they released this data set, and shout out to them about this whole work. And we really, really appreciate the Nemotron team and the DesiLM team, I'm assuming. Nistan, I didn't know about this, so thanks for the tidbit. So the Desi team that NVIDIA acquired for these releases. Let's go, NVIDIA, let's go, let's go. We're also going to talk about NVIDIA GTC in a second. Last thing that I wanted to chat about is this DAPO release from ByteDance. Super quick because, well, we're missing our friend, Yam, who is back on X, by the way, finally, but he's not with us on the show. He may join at some point, and Yam is great to cover and like make these like models and papers for us very approachable. But basically, if you guys remember R1 when it was released, one of the cool things about the release was a paper. In the paper, they discuss all different ways to achieve that supremacy with R1, and one of the ways was this formula for reinforcement learning called GRPO, Group Rating Policy Optimization, something like this. I don't exactly remember. GRPO, we should go and check. And then as far as my timeline is concerned, as far as the vibes are concerned, ByteDance, yes, TikTok ByteDance, because they do incredible stuff we talked about ByteDance models before. They released a new open source reinforcement learning system called DAPO, and outperforms previous state-of-the-art on AI.me with 50% accuracy using 50% less training steps. 50% less training steps, which is crazy. The folks from the open source Chinese community just keep giving us more and more. And I'm pretty sure that like the major labs in like OpenAI, Anthropic, etc., they have a bunch of like optimization techniques in there for RL. I'm pretty sure that that's what's happening, but they're not releasing any. So the only ones that we get is coming from the open source Chinese stuff. Also, one release, 50% AI.me 2024. They trained Qwen 2.5 32 billion parameters to surpass DeepSeek R1 with 50% fewer steps of training. I think it's super cool. So there's a bunch of reasons, dynamic sampling and token level loss, whatever. If that's of interest to you, make sure that don't miss DAPO, because a lot of people are now doing training with RL. If any of this did not make sense to folks in the audience, because I know for a fact we have some machine learning engineers, like crazy folks doing crazy RL, and so if this did not make sense to y'all, please correct me and add some more details, or come to the show to talk about this. So this is a big invite to our folks.
No, this is pretty. I can actually go in a little bit. So it looks like the ByteDance method is still pretty close to group relative policy optimization.
Thank you.
And they just added some more stuff, but it's still roughly the same thing. And for people in the audience, this is, you do reinforcement learning where if you have some kind of data set where you know what the answer is in the end. So it could be a math problem. It could be like a medical problem, which is what I'm doing right now with Dr. Johnson Thomas. And I was also able to show, like on a 3D model, it greatly improves performance there. And if you know what the right answer is going to be, you end up generating 8 different samples. And then you, instead of only reinforcing what the model says on the right answer, you do some fancy trickery. I need to wrap it up, but you use all of the answers, and then you do like a group relative like distribution of tokens. There's some stuff in there in the code that even I don't fully understand, and then you train that back into the model versus doing only rewarding the model on the right answer. And what this does is this steers the model to just think more and ramble more, and because you're not necessarily rewarding on it just getting it like a lottery system of it just getting it perfect randomly, you're actually rewarding on it exploring that latent space. So the model actually exploring many different ideas. And the way this training works is you tell it to just put some reasoning tags or put some thinking tags and then come up with the answer. And then you just check if the answer is right in the end. So you can only do it for stuff where you do know the answer. So it could be code, math problems, and medical answers, actually, which is pretty interesting. And it resulted in drastic improvements in the end. And this is how DeepSeek R1 was trained. And yeah, this is like playing around that idea as well. But I have to say that I don't see the code for the ByteDance one yet out. I see the paper
right here,
and there's a repo.
Oh, the paper is here, but the code is not
there's
here
no the code's not out. Whereas the DeepSeek code that was all out, people have been using that.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that the GitHub is here. They're planning to release it. They also have datasets here. And model weight's coming soon as well. So shout out to ByteDance folks for this work and Tsinghua University as well. Right, folks, we're moving on to big companies because we have a lot to discuss here. And let's move on. Anything else in open source that we missed? Please give us in the comments links. We'll definitely cover like the most important stuff. There may have been 3 releases of models just as we talked about these ones, right? Please help us stay up to date, folks, while you listen to the show, scroll Twitter, and there's always up-to-date news. By the way, here is a good opportunity to shout out a great friend of the pod, a community member that's very, very much updating everyone else as well. Lincoln, President Lin on X, give him a follow for sure. I'll add his things to the show notes. He always has the releases as well. I also have the releases. I want to show you guys my new thing. I actually didn't just added this. I found a Telegram bot that is called GenAI Monitor. And what it does is it just gives me GitHub releases and Hugging Face releases on anything that happens. And all big studios as well. It's so cool. So, for example, I can see that today OpenR1 was released from Olympic Coder, blah, blah, blah. PyTorch released something. There's like this GenAI monitor thing is super cool. Not a lot of people. I think they did a great job connecting multiple things. This is how my new thing to help follow the latest news as well. So I'm going to be checking this for you. You don't have to go and check this unless you want to. It's a lot of notifications. I added this yesterday. I already have 136 notifications from yesterday. So you will still need to filter out the bubble. However, the cool thing about this sometimes shows you the Hugging Face space before they they first need to open the space. Then they need to upload the files. Then they need to make sure it runs. Then they ask for 0 GPUs. So you can actually know about some stuff before they release a Twitter thread about this, which is pretty cool. That's what we want. Just skimming through this, nothing is very interesting there. Announcements from GTC, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Back to the show, folks. Big companies APIs for which we do not have a transition, but we have like a sound, I think. No, not this one. We have a sound for this. All right, in the big companies, APIs and LLMs, the place where we talk about multiple approaches of how to build your LLMs without open models, we have not much news this week. Some news, but not much news. Specifically, we have Google, who made deep research for free. Folks, you now can go, and we actually looked at it. If you go to gemini.google.com or the Gemini app, you can now do a drop-down and go do deep research, and you don't have to pay for Gemini Pro to do this. And this is pretty damn cool. Not only that, we talked about the deep research before. The UI is a little bit different as well, so you can like actually see sources. This is pretty cool. What is the latest episode of ThursdAI covered? Let's say like this. I'll just test it live super quick. This is not the AI mode that we've talked about with Robbie Stein from Google's AI search, right? So this is a significantly deeper search. It shows you the plan. It lets you edit the plan as well.
Yeah, if it has a lot of YouTube sources, I think it actually watches the videos, and it takes a long time because of that. I think that's what's slowing it down too. So yeah. I was gonna make a joke that hopefully it's done by the end of the show.
Okay, so we'll start with this, and hopefully we'll watch the 2-hour videos. While we wait for this, I want to say a huge welcome back to our dear friend of the show, Jan Peleg. What's up, man?
And he's gone.
And he's gone. And he's back.
Short reunion.
Let's do this again.
Okay. It's gonna work this time.
Yeah, it's gonna be back in a year.
Hey, let's go. Yeah, welcome back, man. How are you?
Fine. Thank you.
Welcome back. Folks who have tuned in.
A lot. So much went on.
Yeah. Folks who tune in and are new, Yam is a dear friend of the pod and a co-host for a while. And we're very, very happy that you're back with us to cover the latest and greatest news. Welcome back. We will not bug you about why the fuck did you disappear. I will say only the one thing. Many people in the community directly reached out to me and said, hey, is he okay? I was like, I'm hoping. So send us an update. People love you and want to know that you are safe and okay and everyth's fine. So
I'll be back, guys.
Awesome. So we will move. Oh, so look, the deep search did get a lot of sources from ThursdAI News. It's free. On that topic as well, let me open another thing. Grok launched deeper research, which is, I think it's just really funny. If you go to grok.com, I think if it's on X already or not. Come on. No, I'm going to open this in here. 1 second. If you go to grok.com, there's a drop in deep research. There used to be a drop in that. I don't know, but there used to be a drop down, and now there's a deeper research. It does even more search for you. Grok's one, did they release it for free, folks? I think they did.
It's just just different rate limits if you're on Premium Plus or Premium, but you still get it if you.
Yeah. So definitely we are in the realm of if you need to do very much a lot of search, there's now no excuse to not do. Deep research from Google, from Gemini is now available for everybody for free. Let's move to the next thing. OpenAI, not the news gonna come very soon. So in 30 minutes, we're gonna tune into the OpenAI live stream to talk about their breaking news. But OpenAI also had something of a release yesterday, and they have made O1 Pro available in the API and for a ridiculous price. So for folks who are not following as close as we follow, AI basically has released O1 as a reasoning model in the APIs, but for the pro tier, for the $200 a month tier that many people, because of that, jumped on it, they had a specific version of O1 called O1 Pro. We got confirmations from the O1 team, just publicly, not directly to us, but publicly from Michelle Porcras and some other folks. The O1 Pro is not just a different model. It's not only thinking for more. There's some system in there. There's a bunch of stuff. So we're not sure what O1 Pro actually is, but we do know that it cost them a lot of money because they gave us the access to it now, and it costs us a lot of money, a ridiculous amount, folks. So we're talking about $150 for 1 million input tokens and $600, which I think could be the highest API price that I've seen in the API world for 1 million output tokens. $600 for 1 million output tokens. If you pay for the $200 a month tier, I don't think they limit you over there. It's only if you really, really, really want to build this into your tool and use it for the best one imaginable. Now, there's also to be said, I think the O1 Pro is still one of the best performing models generally, and nobody has been able to eval this yet because they didn't have it over the API. So what this opens up is somebody with very deep pockets to make sure and actually start running evaluations. I'm not going to do it. Although I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to spend I'm definitely not going to spend my own money to run evals of comparisons. But this model is supposedly probably the best powered model right now that you can access via API. But maybe with a little bit of intelligence on top of O1, maybe there could be 10% of difference. And for this 10%, you're gonna pay $600 for 1 million tokens. DeepSeek is 4. What's DeepSeek at latest? But I think it's very it's ridiculously cheap. It don't make sense.
And you get the reasoning traces with DeepSeek.
You
don't think you get them for this price.
You don't. Yam?
Let's debug this. What do we have confirmed? Just to make it clear, what do we have confirmed? We know it's necessarily not a different model, or we don't know that. It's an interesting detail.
They claimed specifically, and I can go and find the tweet, I think I mentioned it in ThursdAI at one point, they confirmed that it's not only, this is O1, just to be clear, but it's not only O1 with a lot of thinking. So O3, when it was released, remember ARC AGI price, they said O3 with a lot of thinking beats this 87% or something. They confirmed that this is not only that. So this is not only more GPU and more power. So supposedly there's some sort of, I don't know, maybe they do search and then come back.
It can be best of N, which significantly is gonna cost them more and obviously gonna get you far better result. Now, the interesting thing is whether or not it's the other O1 is the same model, or it is also a more powerful model, which is different. It's a really interesting detail, but yeah, we don't know, but
we can from the price that this could be like a breast search or something. We also saw some research from Google this week that I should probably add to the show notes as well about specifically search getting better results and like one potential more scaling law from search. We should add this to the show notes, but we don't have time to chat about this, unfortunately.
Just one thing.
Yeah.
About the pricing, you had the toggle where you can go to the batch API, and then it costs only half you saw when you are batching it, but it does not do prompt caching. There's no cached input price. So yeah, that's that.
All right, folks. So we're moving on. We do a brief GTC recap. GTC is NVIDIA's flagship convention meeting. I don't know what to call this. Woodstock of AI. Jensen is now basically Taylor Swift. I don't know what to call this, but I know that like Jensen's absolutely going live on stage and saying, "Hey, I'm here without a safety net, and I have only the slides. I don't have any teleprompter. I'm just gonna go for 2 hours," and goes like insane detail deep. Like it's absolutely incredible to see how deep Jensen can go, and it's been incredible. So the recap for GTC. This is a brief recap that I took from our friend Rowan Cheng from Rundown AI, and so we're just gonna thank Rowan for the recap. They announced like a bunch of stuff, not a lot of AI. So we talked about the Nemotron stuff as well. They announced this like cool robot called Blue, a Star Wars inspired robot, and they have like a new physics engine with intelligence there. The robot looks super cool, folks. It really like is endearing. We also have some announcements for like Newton, which is their physics engine open source. I keep seeing these physics engine things, and I keep getting frustrated about they're not like measuring up to the level of I want to type something and it generates like a physics scene. I think we've seen like one physics engine like this. You guys remember we got all excited and then it ended up being nothing, and nobody was able to actually do the thing that they claimed in the video. So I'll keep being skeptical until such a time where I can just like type stuff, and with that physics engine things will happen. However, I will say we're not going to cover this too much, but there's a new thing blowing up, Blender MCP. For some reason, out of all MCP tools, Blender MCP became like the coolest thing around. And Blender is this like 3D software. It's very difficult for folks. Blender MCP lets your AI basically know how to do stuff in Blender. And tons of people just like getting blown away by this. It's just one example of tools, basically. MCP is a protocol, but basically tools. So what else in GTC? Blackwell Ultra, a new generation of Blackwell with 1.5x computational power. Nistan, you want to comment on this super quick? Or Yam, you want to comment on this? Have you guys looked at this? Second half of 2025, Blackwell Ultra. We don't have to. We can skip.
We don't know a lot yet. Yeah.
1.5 computational power. They also showed a future GPU roadmap after Ultra, Vera Rubin, and this is the next versions. So after Blackwell, we have Vera Rubin, and then Feynman in 2028. So I love the naming schemes, absolutely, and we'll see. Like everyone is going to jump some level, and Jensen's going to show some graph that like this is like 2x better than before. Just a reminder that we are on multiple exponential curves. Jensen is showing us the hardware exponential curve. OpenAI often shows us the algorithmic exponential curve in scaling laws with 4.5 we talked about, and in test time compute, which is another scaling law that we're writing. Folks, we're writing multiple exponential curves. Some folks corrected me and said that this test time compute is not a exponential scaling law. It's a log level scaling law. I don't know. I did not take any statistics. They may be right. But I know that shit is moving fast. That's what I know, basically. They also released Groot. Groot is a customizable foundation model for training robots. So shout out Dr. Jim Fan, who leads kind of the NVIDIA robotics team. And Groot looks super, super cool. They released the model as well. Nissan, I think you sent the link to this as well. They released like a robotics model. And a super cool tiny computer. We talked about another small one, but this one is even smaller, DGX Spark. DGX Spark is a tiny supercomputer that Jensen showed. It has 1,000 TOPS of AI performance with 128 gigabytes of RAM and Grace Blackwell architecture. So a bunch of announcements and DGX Station as well. So there's always a picture of Jensen holding something cool, and only for people who don't follow, this looks the same. But I will say the hope not to offend anybody with this metaphor. It's like folks who don't follow soccer or football, and for them every match looks the same. They're pretty much doing the same thing. But for folks who follow the actual thing, they get like so excited about what's going to happen on the field. For folks who follow NVIDIA stuff, and obviously for investors as well, every little thing that Jensen shows is like 2x better less than a year after. So it's crazy. So we're basically going to pause, and there's a bunch of partnerships as well. So that's...
Does anyone else feel that NVIDIA has taken the spark of Apple and he's like a new Steve Jobs in a way? I've seen a comparison and I thought, that's interesting.
I will say they're doing innovation. And meanwhile, I had a tweet today. I got so pissed at Apple. We didn't cover this last week, but basically there's some stuff about Apple's intelligence, Apple Intelligence, that we got all excited about during last summer, that's not going to come. All of what they announced, they had fucking ads for this thing. Ads of like, hey, Siri, do this thing, blah, blah, blah. That's not going to come until like 2027? Folks, AGI could be here in 2027. What are you talking about, Apple? I got so weirded out by this news. Not only me, Wolfram, thanks for prompting, because I did really want to cover this. Daring Firewall, which covers Apple for the last 20 years, John Gruber, he basically said something's rotten within Apple. And that's been like absolutely crazy because, hey, he's been their fan service for the last 20 years. If he says something, that absolutely something is wrong. They're planning the releases for like 2 years out. Do you know how much is going to change in those 2 years? Like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be here fully physical or like half digital by then. And they're like, oh yeah, we're only going to release like the smart Siri. Meanwhile, Siri right now is so dumb that I asked it to precondition my Tesla, and I said, turn preconditioning on, and it said, which one? And show me two options, turn on and turn off. Like, it knew the transcription. It literally says, turn on preconditioning, and it asked me if I wanted to turn on or off. It's 2025, folks. We've passed first quarter. We're talking about models running on my device that beat like GPQA and Diamond and go like AI me and solve the competition. And my dumbass Siri doesn't know if I want to turn something on when I ask it to turn something on. That's the state of AI Apple Intelligence we're in. It's absolutely abysmal. Abysmal, and hopefully folks are going to wake up.
Why don't they become a GPT wrapper? I don't understand. They can be a GPT wrapper and like get it done. Seriously. Like.
Yep. And they have.
Or they could just add Whisper. I have to actually take my recordings, voice recordings on Apple, and then convert them to WAV files and then just run Whisper, because the Siri transcription is usually okay and quite often garbage. So it'll just get it wrong.
Yes.
And yeah.
Transcription got a little better, just a tiny bit better, but not enough that Siri actually does anything with it. All right.
Give it 2 more years.
at least
well,
give it until the singularity, and then
they're gonna sell more hearing aids in those 2 years than all of the AI company profits combined. Like that's true. So yeah.
Alrighty, we should move on to this week's buzz. Well, I'm gonna wait for Morgan to join us, so we're gonna talk about this week's bugs then. I want to start covering the 3D stuff before we have around 30 minutes until the OpenAI live stream that we're gonna cover, and we also have Joseph Nelson, a friend of the pod, that's gonna join us. I think Joseph is already in the space. And Joseph, if you're listening to us, join us also in the StreamYard link that I DM'd you, so we can actually see you and see like what you guys are about to announce. So we're about to have breaking news. Before this, though, I really want to cover this, folks. It's absolutely incredible to see how fast this field also develops. And then let me show you what we're talking about. So entire screen and this one. Oh, actually, we have Joseph here. So we're going to do 3D afterwards. Let's wait until he connects, and then we'll do an introduction, a brief chat with a friend of ours. Basically, while Joseph connects, we'll add him to the stage, and hopefully you'll set up a microphone and we can see you. If you guys remember, multiple times when anything happens in the world of VLMs or in the world of vision models as well, we get our friend Piotr Skalski that hasn't been on the pod for a while, but Piotr is our friend and a vision expert that we invite to tell us all about the cool new segmentation models and different things. Piotr works at a company called Roboflow. Joseph is a co-founder of Roboflow that hopefully is with us. Joseph, are you here?
I am.
Hey man, what's up? Are you able to? Oh, there he is. Let's go. Welcome, man. So this is your first time on the pod, I believe, but you're probably listening. But the company was represented on the pod as well due to... No, you've been here before. We talked. I somehow believe we talked.
Yeah, actually, I think When Segment Anything 2 came out, I think
Yes.
the last time we caught up.
Yes, so you've been here. My apologies. But for those, since Segment Anything 2 came out, multiple things have happened and many more folks joined ThursdAI. So how about you start with maybe just an introduction of who you are and also what Roboflow is?
I'm Joseph. I am the CEO at Roboflow. Roboflow, we build tools, open source tools, a platform, community for developers and enterprise to create and deploy computer vision models to production. So on the open source side, we maintain projects like supervision, inference, notebooks, and a community called Roboflow Universe, where folks create and share open source data sets and models. We have a hosted platform for creating and deploying those models, and we have an inference service for both doing cloud inference and local on-device inference. And about 1 million developers build with our tools. We've been at it for about 4 years. So I like to say, like maybe like weights and biases, like maybe new before pre-ChatGPT, that this AI thing might be big. Of course, the acceleration of the speed of computer vision and capabilities across the AI field have only been accelerating. And so one of the things that we've been eager to do is whenever there's new models that come out, we want to make it really easy for folks to see how those models do on their visual data and put them into production. Today, we're actually maybe have something to share and announce on that front, but I can let you guide the conversation how you see
Absolutely. So I just wanted, before we dive into the stuff, the reason why you're here today is not to just like pump Roboflow, which is well deserved, and we love Roboflow. Supervision is incredible. The fact that you guys are working and opening like in open source and doing all kinds of things. Shout out to Piotr Skalski, also like doing incredible education for the community of how to actually use these models. Because a lot of times Segment Anything 2 comes out or like another model, and that only does like one specific thing, and folks don't actually know how to like utilize this. So not only do you have supervision maintained, which is incredible, like 26,000 stars. I'm gonna add another one. I don't know why I wasn't starred yet, but supervision is fully open source. So you guys like dedicated to like actually provide those tools and have an inference engine of your own and a bunch of stuff that you provide. 1.7 million downloads a month. This is insane, dude. So huge congrats on the success and the work that you guys are doing in supervision. But also this week you came here because you showed me like a sneak peek on your X account with the weights and biases log that looks like insane to me. And you also said that you guys have something cool to announce. So I would love to hear what you guys have and talk about it.
We're introducing two things today. The first is a new state-of-the-art real-time object detection model. It's actually something that we've wanted to do since Roboflow started, is enable the field to move forward in its research and development capabilities with new model capabilities. And we've always been a place where when there's new models that come out, we want to make it easier for folks to understand what they can do, where they're good, maybe where they can be better, how they do on your data, create and deploy them. But we've actually never released a model that we've developed. And so this is the first time where we've taken a lot of those learnings and put that into a model. And it does pretty well. I'll tell you more about it in a second. Alongside that model release, we introduced a new eval, a new benchmark for benchmarking VLMs and object detection models alike. And these two releases are actually batched together for a very deliberate reason. When we went to benchmark our new model, we realized and have seen over the span of time that object detection evaluation is a little bit broken. Like the benchmark that everyone uses is the COCO benchmark, which was introduced in 2014. It's Common Objects in Context, about 200,000 images from the Microsoft team. Hasn't been updated since 2017, but models have continued to get really, really, really good. And so they've saturated the COCO benchmark. And so that coincides with, at the same time, like as Roboflow has grown and as people create and deploy projects and open source projects, we've seen there's actually a pretty big diversion between the way people are using computer vision and the way that we're measuring model performance. And by that, people are using computer vision for stuff like understanding infrared images or wanting to do aerial image processing from drones, maybe medical images, maybe documents, maybe digital images, like understanding video games. None of these things are represented in COCO. And so as models continue to improve, they might be optimizing for a subset of the real world. And so we introduced a benchmark that we call RF100 vision language. And I'll tell you about maybe some of the zero shot performance that might surprise you from like some of the leading models and how far we have to go as a research community, as well as maybe some of the details on RF Dieter, the model. But those are the two headline releases.
So let's cover them. Headline releases. Roboflow finally releases your own model. Would love to hear a few more details about this, but also an eval benchmark, which is needed. Like, we know if there's one thing that I can always say, and that could be the reason, because I work with weights and biases on the evals platform, like, there's always a need for new and better evals, always. And so it's great to see those coupled as well. And so you're releasing together this model and the new eval to show that the previous benchmarks is like outdated. And I agree with you. Coco has been around for a while. And I think what you mentioned resonates is, because that's the eval, many folks optimize maybe to like test their models on this eval, and this leads to very specific optimizations, and that maybe doesn't generalize well. So what can you tell us about the model? Remind us the name again, and where can folks find it, and give us some details.
Yeah, the model is called RF Dieter. So it's from the detection transformer family of models. So back in 2023, there was a model that was introduced called RT Dieter, a real-time detection transformer. And RF Dieter is an homage to that, but with Roboflow pre-appended. It's a fully open source Apache 2 commercially permissive license to take, use, deploy, fine-tune. It is the first real-time object detection model to exceed 60 mean average performance on Coco, and it performs better than all other current object detection models on what we call real-world data sets, and that's a part of the eval. It's a transformer-based architecture, as the name implies, of being a real-time model, meaning it can run on the edge, and Papers with Code defines it as 25 plus frames per second when it processes things. We're releasing two sizes, a base model size and a large model size. And we benchmark and compare its performance to leading state-of-the-art transformer models, as well as the YOLO family of models, which are particularly popular for doing real-time types of work and problems. As you mentioned, we've long supported open source models, and actually we hope that this actually increases the number of more models that people release. In a sense, like, the introduction of our own models actually meant to make it so that hopefully other folks beat it pretty fast and go in this direction of realizing some of the gains and improvements we've done. The core thing that we've realized that allowed us to produce leading performance is this observation that transformers, what they're incredibly good at is maintaining context in pre-training. So if you do a large scale pre-train and then you apply that to some subset of a domain problem, then the model can do pretty well. Now, great, we're doing the screen share so you can see. So the novelty with RF Dieter is we use a large scale pre-train and a grounding dyno v2 backbone, and we have various sizes. And what we've observed is that by doing that pre-train and then applying to a smaller domain problem, it actually maintains a lot of that context to do better on even the in-domain problem contexts. And so we think that basically what we're aiming to show the field is move in the direction of take all the benefits that we know and love about transformers and then continue to enable them to be used at real-time speeds and on edge devices at rates that might previously not have been explored as well. So the model is the best for real world data. Yeah.
When you say in domain, and folks who are not following the vision fields and like the field generally, what do you mean? Can you give us an example of like what does like out of domain, in domain means? Is a practical example?
Yeah. So this kind of gets back to the idea of like the eval concept. So maybe I can introduce this concept alongside.
Yeah.
In domain, out of domain. So generally, a lot of vision models are trained on or evaluated on the Coco dataset. Now, a lot of vision problems are pretty diverse, pretty different. Types of problems people might be using vision for, as we were mentioning, might be like something that's out in the real world, which could be maybe a document you're processing, a lab image, something from underneath the microscope. Maybe it's aerial imagery, satellite imagery, maybe it's industrial images, could be infrared data. These things are often out of domain and out of domain distribution. And understanding the visual world is pretty complicated and pretty complex, which usually means fine-tuning or at least distillation or domain adaptation is key. The key thing with RF Dieter is it is the best model for working on in-domain and real-world contexts. So out of the box, it's already pretty good on Coco and super fast, and it guarantees for all models that are available presently to adapt best to in-domain problem types. You can think about it like Roboflow. In the 4 years of folks building and creating open source projects, they've exposed all these types of problems that they're working on. And for a bit, we were kind of like, are we crazy? Like, these problems aren't just like people and vehicles and things you see in Coco. Like, we're seeing all this other stuff. Like, what's going on? And then with 4 years of time and 500 million user labeled and shared open source images, we're like, no, actually, this is just the way people are using computer vision, and models are not working in the problems and contexts that developers need them to. So what can we do to move the field in the direction that allows the types of problems that people are actually using computer vision for to be solved?
That's incredible. So first of all, congrats on the release. This looks amazing. The graph that you showed from VS also goes crazy. Nistan, I think Nistan wanted to add to the stage and like maybe jump on and ask you also a question. And then also I do want to talk about the eval and how we can find it. Like what's next for the eval benchmark as well.
Yeah, out of all the notebooks or demos I've ever made, the coolest ones that people like were always some kind of combination of using YOLO and drawing like 60 frames per second squares on screen. So people loved the visual aspect of it. Can you tell us more, because you mentioned edge devices and these are becoming a lot more usable there. Can you tell us what kind of performance, you went into it a little bit, but what kind of performance do we expect to see? And if we're getting this right, this will only draw the boxes so far and doesn't really need as much pre-training, because it seems like it's pretty good out of the box itself. So yeah, can you tell us a bit more? What kind of performance, what kind of video performance in particular people can expect on edge device? I see there's 6 ms latency, and if you can go a bit more into that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so as you said, a lot of vision problems, they demo really well because you can like see what's going on. And that also means usually you're running near where the problem you're solving is. Like, for example, we have some broadcasters and they want to co-locate their compute next to the broadcast event because they don't want to stream it to the cloud, do inference, and then put it live over the wire for a broadcast. Or maybe you're like in a place where there's not great internet, so you don't even have the luxury of streaming if you wanted it. So you're compute constrained, which means running on the edge is critical for a lot of vision problems. So a key thing about RF data is supporting edge vision capabilities. The types of performance that folks can expect on the edge, you were sharing the screen share of the latency to expect on the model sizes. For RF data base, the latency that we benchmarked is right around 6 milliseconds end to end on a T4 using TRT, which is what a lot of the benchmarks will suggest. On an edge device, what does that translate to? It means that you'd be able to, so edge devices commonly are NVIDIA Jetson, Intel NUC, those Qualcomm devices. On an edge device, depends on the size of Jetson, but there's like a Jetson Nano to Jetson Xavier. You could expect anywhere from 15 to, if you get the largest orange sizes, 60 plus frames per second in real-time performance. And remember, papers with code defines real-time as 25 FPS. The human eye sees at about 30 FPS. So there's quite a bit of overhead available for other problems and processes someone would want to run on the edge device. Packaging things up and running them on the edge is why we made the open source inference server that we released, because it can be a pain to manage and get things going on the edge and optimize. So that's a key part of.
Okay, thank you. And a very brief other question. As a company that works in open source, what kind of advice do you have for other companies, or how can other companies reach you that want some custom work in this regard?
I think the key thing about open source is building with and for the community. So this model represents that effort where we're seeing folks wanting to run on the edge. We're seeing examples where people want to use transformer-based architectures, and we're seeing this need that's being unmet. And so, in fact, like even this release, there's like, we already know there's like already so much more to do. People will probably want more model sizes. They'll probably want better benchmarks. They'll probably want new task types. They'll probably want maybe other data sets that it can run on and so forth. And we could have said, hey, what are all those things that we know someone's going to want to do and just do that out of the box? Or in fact, we could allow a first release and then solicit feedback from the community and continue to update and improve and support the README. So I think that's a key part of building open source, and actually a key benefit is people use your stuff, they break your stuff, they have feature requests for your stuff, and that's key. And the second thing is like so much of AI is yet to be fully understood of how like all the places it'll be useful and impactful. And so open source also allows leaning into that advantage. In terms of reaching us, so reaching us about this project, there's the GitHub repository that we just published. And of course, you can open issues or PRs for things that you like. For reaching me personally, I'm on Twitter X at Joseph of Iowa, and the company's handle is at Roboflow. You can find my email pretty easily based on that information too. And we're, of course, like a hugely collaborative company for especially those that are doing open source AI problems. So happy to be supportive of any ways of integrations or capabilities or deployment or data collaborations. We'd love to be a part of supporting your all's efforts.
That's so awesome. Joseph, thank you so much for coming up. I know being mindful of your time, I just want to make sure that we don't miss the very visual aspect of what you guys do. Nistan talked about this, but just going to your website, just seeing like real-time things move and all of the people in there just like segmented correctly and straight. This chocolate example is like, I looked at this like, I don't know, like in loop, like multiple times. So there's that addition of what you guys do is very visual, but also open source is very important. Thank you so much for working on this. I want to leave the stage to you before you go for like whatever shout outs you want to do and whatever, like the place is yours. If you're hiring, you can tell people and reach the people through there as well. Feel free to pump your own stuff.
Yeah, each of the things you mentioned are true. We try to make tools that people want to use. So please give them a try and let us know what should be better about them. And we are rapidly growing. Engineering, machine learning, go-to-market are all things that we're actively aiming to bring into the team at the moment. Maybe I'll leave you with a last-minute trivia question, Alex. So we introduced this benchmark, RF100 VL. And everyone's like, all the models are infinitely great and work amazingly out of the box. My quiz question for you is, if you had to guess the zero-shot performance of a current state-of-the-art model, you could take your choice, maybe QuindVL 2.5 or maybe Gemini. Let's do QuindVL because it's open source and people like using it. Yeah. If you had to guess the zero-shot performance of the world's best open source multimodal model on a benchmark like real-world stuff like RF100 VL, what percentage mean average precision do you think QuindVL 72B gets on RF100 VL?
Ooh. That's a tough one.
It's a great model, right? So it's got to be
It's a great model. Real world is very complex, as we know from robotics and everything. So I would say, dude, I don't know.
Wait,
I don't know.
What are roughly the other numbers?
Because that's part of what I'm making it really hard by not giving you any context.
30, 40.
Let's go for 12%.
Okay, 12% from Alex, and
I'll add folks like to the show back. Come on, folks.
38. I just called a number.
38. Any other guesses?
42, of course.
42.
42. That's a good guess.
Yeah, any idea? Throw us a number.
Number.
I don't know. I think it's a trick question.
Yeah.
I think there is
yeah, it's a bit of a trick question. The zero-shot performance of QuindVL 2.5 vision language on real-world data, 5.8%.
No way.
5.8%. So we as a field have a long way to go before we have zero-shot performance on real-world context. So,
yeah. So
hopefully
basically,
this is one that people want to improve and break.
Yeah, just a question, like, what's the target space? Like, how do you measure this in terms of like what targets?
This is an object detection task, and you provide instructions, almost like providing annotator instructions of saying like, hey, like on this video stream, label all of the people, and then based on the bounding box grounding capability.
Yeah, so you give the targets. Yeah, you give the targets beforehand, like, and it needs to pick, like to detect.
Yeah. So the held out data, and I just put the link in the chat to the preprint of the paper, which the table that we're referencing is on page 7. So the task is you give the QuindVL an image, and you hold out the ground truth bounding boxes and names for those bounding boxes, and then you provide annotator instructions. And you compare if you give a human the same annotator instructions versus giving the model those annotator instructions, how well does the model do as measured by mean average precision?
It's completely open-ended. And it's completely open-ended. Okay, that's very hard. Yeah. Okay, that's a hard problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to just... Yeah, let me interrupt because we're going live to the next segment. Joseph, I want to thank you so much. One of the best things that we get to do on ThursdAI is to get the folks that announce the stuff to come and talk about the stuff themselves. I want to just shout out some commenters. This is absolutely not a sponsor segment. ThursdAI does not do sponsor. The only sponsor is Weights and Biases, and we just love the folks that we work with, our friends, and this is the reason for the segment. I think that this is like state-of-the-art models, and I just want to shout out Roboflow for all the open source that you guys do. And Piotr is a dear friend of the pod that came and helped us through like a bunch of visions. You're obviously a dear friend of the pod. So we really love the work you do, and congrats on the state-of-the-art model. And the eval that's not saturated, folks, best in the world, QuendVL. Like we always talk about QuendVL. Jun Yang from Gwen is here, and like we talk about this being like the best vision model. 5%, it means this is an amazing benchmark to hill climb on, and the models will just get better. So huge thank you to you and for the work that your team did for this release. And we appreciate your time, and come back to us with new releases as well. We hope to see this model get significantly more improved. The one thing that we barely mentioned is the sizes. These models are tiny, folks. 29 million parameters for base and 128 million parameters for large. All right, folks, we're going over to OpenAI's live stream. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's go.
Voice agents. Today, we're going to enable developers and businesses to build voice agents. Agents which are reliable, accurate, and flexible. And so we're going to announce a bunch of new models and tools for that.
Today, we're releasing 3 new models and a bunch of new tools and capabilities designed to make it really easy for developers to build rich, human-like voice experiences. We have 2 new state-of-the-art speech-to-text models that outperform our previous model, Whisper, on literally every language that we've tested. We have a new text-to-speech model that for the first time lets developers control not just what the model says, but how it says it. And then we have a big update to our Agents SDK to make it really easy to turn text-based agents into voice agents. So let's get into it. A few things to cover. We'll start with speech-to-text, where we have 2 new models, GPT-4o Transcribe and GPT-4o Mini Transcribe. You've been working on these models. I'd love to hear how they were built and how they perform.
Compared to our last generation models, Whisper and Whisper 3, our new generation model is based on our large speech model. This means this new model has been trained on trillions of audio tokens. It also ingests our latest technologies and also architecture of our models. We also distilled the larger model down to a much smaller size one, which is GPT-4o Mini Transcribe.
Nice. So what I'm seeing here is that the new model is state-of-the-art across many languages, English, Spanish, more. And then actually 4o Mini is state-of-the-art, if not for its bigger brother model as well.
Yeah, if you are actually looking for a very high accuracy transcription model, our model definitely is the best choice for you.
Great. So that's GPT-4o Transcribe and GPT-4o Mini Transcribe. 4o is available in the API today for just 0.6 cents per minute, same price as Whisper, and 4o Mini Transcribe is 0.3 cents, so half price. We're also enhancing our speech-to-text APIs with streaming. Next capability is a new text-to-speech model, GPT-4o Mini TTS. Yaroslav, would love for you to show us how this one works.
Yeah, let me pull this up. This is OpenAI.fm. It's a website we built just to make it easy to play with this new model. So as you can see, there are a bunch of voices that you can choose from. There are different prompts that we pre-generated, but you can also type in your own. This is basically a new field that we added. It's an instructions field that tells the model how you want it to speak the text. So yeah, let's maybe try some
mad scientist, please.
Exactly, yeah.
Aha! The stars tremble before my genius. The rift is open, the energy surging. Unstable? Perhaps. Dangerous? Most certainly.
And just to be clear, the tone, the personality is not tuned into the model. It's just prompted.
Exactly, yes. You can just prompt it and you can be as specific as you want.
We thought the last thing to show would be how this all comes together. And to do that, we're releasing an update to our Agents SDK. Yaroslav, I'd love for you to show us the code changes involved to make that conversion.
Now, let me open the backend server code. So it's a very simple WebSocket backend.
Awesome.
All right.
So that was like 9 lines of code
Yes.
to build the voice agent.
And now it's a voice
Very
agent.
cool.
All right, folks, I'm going to pause this here because I want to introduce a friend of the pod, Kwindla, co-founder of Daily, a friend of the pod. I consider you a friend now as well. And also our absolutely most world-renowned expert in voice AI, which I am incredibly thankful for you being here because we need to cover what they just announced. It's great that they're showing like the additional stuff, but the main stuff that we need to talk about, they just announced with breaking news. So just before you begin, I'm going to hit that breaking news button because we just did like the live stream of OpenAI's new voice text-to-speech and speech-to-text. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. All right, folks, so you just heard it here first. And in case you didn't hear, OpenAI just went live and announced 2 major things and a bunch of little other things. One thing that they've announced is a new speech-to-text engine. And that's not just a speech-to-text model like Whisper was before. This is a speech-to-text model that's built on top of their transformer models. And that one is significantly outperforming I don't know if significant, but outperforming Whisper 2 and Whisper 3. And they claim state-of-the-art on multiple languages as well. So that's crazy. And that's fairly cheap as well. There's a distilled version, even smaller version. One thing that I love about this is that it allows you to actually prompt the transcription understanding versus just providing a bunch of text words like we do for Whisper to actually, let's say we're in ThursdAI, I can give it like the synopsis for ThursdAI, let's say. And the other thing that they just announced is a new text to speech from the other side, right? So like the speech to text first, converts your speech into text, so you can do some stuff like transcription and translation as well. And then the other one is GPT-4o Mini TTS, text to speech, which I believe also is built, it's GPT-4o. So it's also based on the Transformers models. And that one, you can prompt to be emotional. You can ask it to do some stuff. You can prompt a character a voice, and which is super, super cool. And to cover all this and to give us all the other stuff that they also announced, and Quinn, welcome to the stage. I don't believe you need an introduction, but in case people still don't know who you are, we have a bunch of new people joining. Feel free to cover yourself and Daily super quick.
I'm a network engineer. I do low latency stuff obsessively to a fault. And so I have a lot of fun trying to squeeze latency out of these pipelines that we're all building for voice AI. You can follow me on Twitter because I tweet about this stuff all the time. And I'm so excited to be here. This has been a crazy week. I'm at GTC. I just got my golden ticket for a 5090.
Let's go. Congrats.
I'm excited about that.
I heard they ran out super quick. That's what I heard.
Yeah, they're releasing a few every day and you have to stand in line. So it's a total NVIDIA classic thing. Yeah, this is a really fun release. I think there are a couple of two really high level themes here. One is the architecture stuff, exactly as you were talking about, building all of this stuff on top of these big LLM architectures as the labs and the open source community figures out how to train multimodality into the core just opens up so many possibilities. So these are fully promptable models, as they showed in the live stream. The example that my colleague at Daily, Chad, kind of put into one of the PipeCat little single file examples for this was he prompted the transcription model that he was going to talk about dogs. And you can measure the difference between whether, the transcription is right for dog breed names or not with just that really simple addition, because the models are so good at context and they have so much context embedded in their weights already that you're just trying to steer to in the latent space. At least that's the way I think about it.
This basically opens up a whole field of prompting for these models, which is crazy, which is we've been prompting for the last 2.5 years for ChatGPT. We've been doing way more than this for image models, right? Prompting is a craft. And now Whisper was basically just do this thing. Here's maybe a few keywords. But now for this model, for at least the transcription model, but for this one, you can just prompt a whole thing into existence. This is crazy. There's a whole new field open up.
There's not really a difference between translation and transcription internally in the model, right? Now they're going to fine tune these models so that they do what you want to do for different use cases. And that's going to be a little bit in tension with making it totally promptable. Yeah. But that's the same thing we're doing to add reasoning to models, right? You're trying to expand and steer and optimize where you end up in the latent space. It just feels like it's a whole new territory in this domain to explore.
That's incredible. So we have I want to talk to you about the text to speech one, because text to speech one is very interesting to me. Obviously, they revolutionized the field with Whisper. I remember Whisper being, for me personally, changed my whole life trajectory because I started opening a startup using Whisper, and then it led to ThursdAI. But generally, Whisper just absolutely changed the world in how cheap a translation, how high quality translation can be. Whisper is no longer state of the art for many reasons. There's multiple folks that have trained better models as well, and that was a very specific model. This one is based on their series of transformer models. What I haven't played with it yet, but what can we expect? Have you guys looked at? Because I know Daily, there's a bunch of transcription happening behind the scenes that you're offering as well. Have you guys tried those versus Whisper? Could you give us a tidbit about that?
Yeah, we've been playing with it. I think the two big things are Whisper wasn't really designed to be real time. So it's been pressed into service for some voice AI use cases, but mostly people have not used Whisper for conversational voice because the latency is just long enough that it blows your latency budget when you're trying to respond really quickly.
There's also the chunking thing with 30 second chunks that you need to pass the chunk to the next chunk, and that doesn't really jive with live stream. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always this trade-off between latency and accuracy of the transcription, how big a buffer you're feeding it, how much context it has, all that stuff. And Whisper's fantastic, but just wasn't really designed for the real-time stuff. this stuff is, they really have real time top of mind as they're putting out these new models. And for those of us building the voice agent and the like voice and video agents, that's really exciting. I think the results here are really good, although I'm always careful about that because like when a model's brand new, we haven't run it through all the evals.
Yep.
But I think these models are, I think they put OpenAI sort of back in the mix of like, would you use these for production use cases that some other models have eclipsed Whisper for, like real-time stuff?
So one example of this is Whisper 3. When it came out, we got all excited about Whisper 3, and then many people just like, nope, I'm going to use Whisper 2. Like, it's not good enough for this use case, that use case as well.
I think that's another theme for me, just because I'm super interested in like how the big labs do this stuff. And I think the big labs, as much as they know internally, are really learning as everybody externally builds stuff.
Yep.
Like part of what is happening here with the prompting of these models, I'm sure they figured it out internally too. But like a lot of people have been using Gemini 2 Flash for transcription because it's a big large language model and there's like just so much capability there and it's audio native. And so if you ask it to transcribe stuff, it actually does an amazing job. And then you can steer it and you can ask it to transform while it's transcribing. And that's, I think a lot of stuff has been this nice feedback loop between the big labs releasing stuff and the community build stuff. And then that informs how the big labs both prioritize what they release and train the next models.
One other thing they've added, and I want to talk to you specifically about this because you told me about this back in, where were we, AI Engineer, semantic VAD. Let's talk about semantic VAD. You guys trained the model, you released it, and you kind of like, hey, let's start this community. And then OpenAI comes with semantic VAD. Could you explain the concept of semantic VAD to folks who have no idea what this is? And then let's talk about like what they released.
Yeah, so the basic problem is like, how do you know when a human is done talking and the AI should respond? So you call it turn detection, or in the academic literature, it's often called phrase inpointing. We're also now calling it semantic VAD, which stands for voice activity detection. Voice activity detection is traditionally like a really small AI model that you train on segments of speech, and you categorize speech as speech or non-speech. You categorize audio as speech or non-speech, and you can use that to decide when a human is done talking. But it's a dumb way to do it, right? Because it's basically just a pause.
I think
like,
as everybody who listens knows, when you talk to any voice mode and you stop to think for just a second, if you talk to a person, that person would wait for you. When you talk to an AI, the AI immediately swoops in with like a bunch of bullshit. And you're like, no, I haven't finished my thought yet. Wait, hold on. This happens with kids all the time. Kids take longer to like come up with something. This is why like my kids just absolutely hate talking with ChatGPT. Just like Dad, tell it to do this. They go to me because like they know how I interact with the model. And I assume that this is experienced with everybody else. This is because the VAD is dumb. It's literally just waiting for silence, right? Like something like similar to this, or maybe not silence, but like speech necessarily.
Whatever a really small AI model thinks is not human speech.
Yeah, not human speech.
You're waiting for a certain amount of time of those frames in a row. And so obviously the next step is to try to get more human-like, and thinking about how humans actually figure out when somebody's done talking. It's a lot about tone of voice, pace of speech, patterns near the end of a sentence, the grammar of the whole sentence. And so you're trying to bring semantics, like language level knowledge in there. And like last year, we were all just trying to figure out how to wire up all these pieces so they worked at all. And now this year, we're like, oh, it's not good enough. Like we got it working, but it's not good enough. So what are the next things? And very clearly, like one of the big pain points in 2025 is this like turn detection problem. Yeah. And all of a sudden, a bunch of people are working on it, which is really exciting. Like I talked to people at all the big labs. And so like everybody now understands this is a big problem. So it's super exciting that OpenAI released like semantic VAD this week. And it's good. I don't know if it's as good as it's going to get, but it's good. Like it's a big step forward. We also, a couple of weeks ago, released an open source model we call Smart Turn for smart turn detection. You can participate in that effort to build like a truly open source, open data, fine-tunable, like multi-language semantic VAD or smart turn model. It's git.new/turn, git.new/turn. And the idea is to build a SOTA, like totally open source smart turn model, because I want to see the big labs make amazing stuff, and I want to see like open source stuff also like pushing the envelope there.
There's also a great potential of learning from the way they did this. Let's give it at this point. Semantic VAD is absolutely important for folks getting to AI voice agents to the level where people can interact with them properly and not wait, etc. I think that I've changed my speaking patterns because of the way that I know how the VAD works. I'm sure that I'm not the only one. Like, I'm sure that I go I do all kinds of things to like have it think that I'm still talking, and this is stupid. I don't want to change my stuff for AI. I want the AI to change itself. So I think semantic VAD is like absolutely incredible.
We 100% do that. We become really bad testers of this stuff. My favorite story about that is like from that book about the development of the Macintosh, where they didn't realize there was a bug in the mouse driver low-level code until they released it to the public, where if you made a very small hiccup in holding the mouse button down with your finger, the whole system crashed.
I love it.
They didn't find it because everybody working on the Mac had practiced so much they never ever made that mistake. That's what we're all like talking to these voice agents.
Yeah. Luckily, we have, and I know you have, and I have as well, we have amazing testers, kids. Kids absolutely hate talking to AI because of this one thing, because of like, the kid is still thinking, like the sentence in the middle. The kid's like trying to like wrap the brain around. So I'm very excited to see how that performs. I have a real life test with my kids. I think we covered pretty much all of the releases, right? So like 2 fully new promptable ASR models, GPT-4o Transcribe and GPT-4o Mini Transcribe. I think they said 0.6 cents and 0.3 cents for each of them. I think 0.6 cents something. We need to confirm this once the actual documentation lands. There's also the new voice model called GPT-4o Mini TTS, which is, all of them are based on GPT-4o. This distilled and like pruned in tiny versions of this, they run also for real time, which is incredible. We talked about semantic VAD. We didn't talk about noise reduction and conversation.item.retrieve. So Quinn, would you like to cover those and tell us what those are about?
Another problem for like production voice agents is like picking up background noise that does sound like speech. Like if you have the radio on in the room and you call a customer support line, typically that really messes up the voice agent because you end up with the background speech being transcribed. So they released a new noise reduction model that filters out things like background speech, and it's tunable. Like it's got a few different keywords for like near, far, something like that. I can't remember exactly. But if you're building voice agents, you should experiment with that. And you should do some testing with things like having a radio on in the background when you call the agent, because that tends to be a real world thing that you hit as soon as you deploy to production. Conversation item retrieve is a really nice improvement to being able to manage the context on the kind of agent framework side. So you're like talking to the OpenAI real-time API in code, and you're just sending it audio and it's chunking up that audio and creating conversation turns. But previously, before they released conversation item retrieve, you didn't have any ability to introspect into what those turns actually were. So you couldn't do things like transcribe one turn at a time and save it in your like backend persistent storage system. Now you can. Now you know exactly what the model heard because you can ask to get that back from the API, which is actually really, really valuable.
We need to move on because they took a big chunk of our show. Usually with live streams, there's like a bunch of stuff they talk about. We can condense. Hopefully on the recording we can condense. Quinn, thank you so much. The one thing that you barely mentioned, and I want to mention for you, is Daily is a company that does real-time stuff. Like we can basically do this meeting on Daily, let's say, and have like the super low latency as well. As you said, network engineer. But also Pipecat is something that you guys released and working on. There's the open source software that allows to play with all these things with like one line of example. So if for folks who are listening and like very interested in like, hey, I want to try this new TTS or I want to try this like new transcription, etc. Daily is an absolutely greatest way to go about this and like super quickly install this. So as we had a chat before with Joseph Nelson from Roboflow and their supervision stuff, you guys are similarly approach as well. You have a company that does this thing in inference and like all of the servers as well, and you also have the open source that you support. We love open source here on ThursdAI. Quinn, thank you so much. We love Daily as well, and thank you as always coming and giving us like the absolutely like most professional breakdown of everything that happens in voice, and we expect to hear from you more. Don't leave yet, because the next item that we're going to talk about is also from this world, and maybe you have thoughts on this as well. There's a bunch of voice and audio stuff that happened. So the live stream of OpenAI we just covered, we're going to add the details. There's 2 new things that happened. They may not be as interesting as what just announced, but Canopy Labs drops Orpheus 3B. Orpheus is also a language model. So folks, basically what we just talked about GPT becoming like a language model that you can prompt for emotions. Orpheus is a 1 billion parameter, 500 billion and 150 million version of a natural sounding speech language model. I will tell you upfront, it's unfair to compare open source to the absolutely state of the art the OpenAI releases. Always, we always talk about this, right? When Mistral comes out, etc. However, they sound good, folks. I don't know, like Wolfram, you had a chance to play with this with Canopy Lab stuff. They have zero-shot cloning, which OpenAI does not give you yet, as far as I saw. Like this TTS new thing, I cannot put Alex's voice and have the TTS like make Alex. I can try to prompt it. Hey, Ukraine, Israeli accent, very excited dude that speaks very passionately about stuff, but likely they won't get my voice. These open source models give you voice, like zero-shot voice cloning, which is super cool. They released like fine-tuned on voices as well, trained on 100,000 tokens with 100 millisecond latency and Apache 2 license. You cannot beat Apache 2 license. Apache 2 is incredible because you can train it a bunch of stuff on your voice, etc. Wolfram, any thoughts from you on Orpheus?
Yeah, the one thing not on the list is that it is not multilingual. So that is not a feature, multilinguality. I tested it in German and it had a heavy accent. But I'm still excited because it's open source. It can be put in and you can run it locally. And it fits on your local systems. The 3B isn't all that big, so you can do it, and it will only get better as a support. I think there will be a lot of support for this.
100%.
So we will hear about it a lot.
And you can train it for other languages too.
Yeah, you can train it, you can fine-tune this. Quinn, I wanted to ask you about just open source models and your approach. I know that like Pipecat supports like the production models, Gemini's, etc. What's generally the thought on your side from like open source models such as this one for agents and building things?
I love these. I think there's two really interesting things about these models. One is they're exposing like new architecture approaches that there's lots of this stuff inside the big labs, but we don't always get to see it. And building like true full duplex streaming mode for these models is something that like the open source community is really pushing on in a really cool way. So there's like at least 4 kind of speech to speech models that are pushing on the architecture in different ways. There's like Sesame, there's Moshi, there's Ultravox. I haven't actually looked at the code for Orpheus yet. I just like played around with it. It's really good. I want to look at the code because I think it's really in that same category. And then there's also super small speech models, which what those open up is the ability to run on device.
On device, yeah.
Like Kokoro is amazing for 82 million parameters. Like it's unbelievable to me that it's so good and so small.
We're blown away by Kokoro. Absolutely,
Really
everybody like was like absolutely blown away. Yeah.
So in Pipecat, like the open source stuff, we just try to support all the models. Like I try to write on the weekends. I try to write like Pipecat services for all the models when they come out, or people submit PRs, because like if you're playing with on device stuff, you still need an orchestration layer. It's not like you only need the orchestration layer if you're calling out to the big lab APIs. So I'm super excited about like all this stuff, and it's developing so fast.
Yep. And we love it that it's an open source, like helps other things develop as well. Last thing that we will talk about here, NVIDIA released Canary, which is 1 billion and 180 million flash speech recognition translation, which kind of pales in comparison to the other news. Like with all my love to NVIDIA, the TTS, that's state of the art now from OpenAI. But I think that Canary is actually like open source. So that's something. CC by license, which allows commercial use. This is a model that you can run. Many folks may not want to go to OpenAI for this latest model. Actually, you guys know I love OpenAI, but Whisper being open source absolutely changed the game for everyone. The fact that this new TTS model is not open source, I don't love. I love folks from OpenAI know that I get excited and hyped about all of the things. For the for the TTS version, okay, may not release this open source. There's problems, but the speech to text model, what's wrong with speech to text model being open source, folks? You release Whisper, you change the world. Give us speech to text in open source, please. Give us this like new GPT. I think it's because it's based on GPT. They will never open source it until such a point where they open source GPT 4.0. But hey, we need this in open source, please. But this new one from NVIDIA Canary, looks pretty cool. Gets second place on the speech recognition leaderboard on Hugging Face. Shout out to Vaibhav and everybody who runs it from the team. Very tiny size, 180 million. Can run on device as well. German, French, and Spanish. Those are a few. I think Whisper supports like 190 languages. This supports 4 as well. So that's pretty cool. So shout out to the folks from NVIDIA for releasing this. And this concludes our voice and audio segment, which was big. And this also, with this, we'll say thank you, Kwindla. We'll be mindful of your time. We're also be mindful of the fact that we're over 2 hours here, but with OpenAI stuff, they usually pushes us a little bit over. So the last 2 things that we need to cover, last 3 things we need to cover. Thank you, Quinn, is the 3D stuff from Tencent. I absolutely want to show. But before this, I want to say hi to a friend of ours, Lucas. Hey, Lucas, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Can you guys hear me?
You're coming through loud and clear.
Lucas!
What's up,
Let's
guys?
go. So, Lucas, we're going to get to what you guys have announced in just a second. Just before this, though, for folks who've been waiting, I absolutely want to show what we're talking about here in Tencent's 3D stuff. So, Tencent updates Hunyuan 3D. If you guys remember, we talked about this before. Hunyuan is one of the best performing video models that's open source. Tencent is a Chinese company, obviously. Also released like image to video, a bunch of like super cool stuff. You can fine tune these models, etc. Hunyuan 3D is their state-of-the-art 3D generation model from one picture or multiple pictures. And they also released like a turbo thing. It's all super cool. So I just want to show you guys like what we're talking about. This is an example of me generating a mouse character just by going to Gemini native image output, just asking for a character, literally drag and dropping that image that Gemini generated into the Hunyuan 3D Turbo, and they released this state-of-the-art model that generates 3D images for you. It's state-of-the-art both in open source and closed source. That's what they claim. So this open source model that I don't believe it's Apache, but we can check on the model, but it's definitely the open source. It's state-of-the-art in geometry details, conditioning alignment, and texture quality. Texture is also ridiculous. Like you can see how close this matches this one image. This was one image. The process from creating an image into 3D now is just like this. Not only that, they released a new acceleration technique called Flash VDM that they also open sourced that makes this model go brrr and go up to 30x with the turbo model. This is ridiculous, folks. You can generate this quality of 3D imagery with less than 1 second on an H100. 1 second of an image to 3D model. This means we're getting to the point where it's near real time with consistency as well, because those are the image inputs, folks. We're getting to near real time 3D generation with like the example of these models. I had to zoom in on my face to see the excitement that I have. The additional thing they released is this thing. Generally, these 3D models, when you provide one image, let's say the frontal image of a character, these models have to come up with what's behind, right? Like in the case of this mouse, for example, you can see as a person, you can see, okay, he has like a tail that goes and curves, etc. So when this model generates the stuff, they need to kind of like assume, the model needs to assume what's happening on the back end. I think this is the first time that I've seen something like this. They released MV, multiple view, where you can provide to the same model the frontal view, the side view, the back view, and the other side view, and they will generate, and you can see the difference here between Hunyuan 3D 2 and then 2 MV. You can see that we're showing a picture of, I don't know, a dog with sunglasses, whatever. So you can see multiple things that are actually significantly better. You can see that the strap around the glasses is correct on the multiple view thing. You can see the tail is correct. You can see like a bunch of stuff. So you basically can generate like a full 3D image that's perfect and not just like a hallucination of the rest of it. And the amazing thing is, folks, we're now at a time where like Gemini literally can generate those for you. I just want to show you that I did this. Let me go and find, I'll show you here. You can ask Gemini to generate this image or upload a different image that you have only the front face of. And you can ask Gemini, hey, rotate this in 90 degrees. Gemini will fucking do it. This is insane. This to me is like absolutely mind-blowing. You need 4 images from a character reference sheet, let's say, of like front, left, back, and etc. And you can go to Gemini, upload one, and say, hey, Gemini, what will this look like rotated? And Gemini will absolutely give it to you with like just straight up. This is an absolutely mind-blowing time that we're living in right now. I just wanted to highlight the fact that the pipeline from your thoughts to a 3D world is like this. And if you have a Vision Pro, you can pull those 3D things and put them in your physical space. If you have a 3D printer, you can print them and put them on your actual physical desktop. This is super cool. So shout out to Tencent, folks who are into the 3D world. I wanted to highlight the multi-view and the turbo are actually improving our lives. As Jensen says, every pixel will be generated and not rendered very soon. We're going to the world where like holodeck is like right there. Like we literally can talk to the voice agent that OpenAI just released, have it transcribe into the Gemini commands that will then generate the images, then take those images, shove it into 3D. 3D generates them in less than 1 second. They just like pop in front of you. The possibilities are endless. The addition of like the MCP Blender stuff that's been blowing up to put those into actual games, those are crazy. So I just wanted to highlight this. And
by the way,
yes.
By the way, you can install it if you have just 6 GB VRAM is enough. Then you can one click and install it from Pinocchio and use it locally. Just 6 GB.
That's not going to take 1 second to generate, but that's absolutely awesome. You can just like run this locally and pipe it into your 3D printer. We have more breaking news. Can you believe it? Like I want to end the show, but we have breaking news. I don't think my co-hosts know what I'm talking about, by the way. AI breaking news. coming at you only on ThursdAI. All right, folks, our breaking news for today, additional breaking news, is we have the biggest lab that was late to this thing. Anthropic releases web search. And so far, when you talk to Claude on AI, it was just Claude. They were the last, I believe, the last company, even OpenRouter added like XAI, whatever. So finally, Claude can now do search on the web. You can enable this, and each response include inline citations, and you can verify the sources. What else is interesting? You can just like toggle it in all the US, only paid plans. So they're still not caught up fully, but it's a small thing that for folks who use the Claude AI stuff, for artifacts, for the best models, for coding, etc., that's been missing for a while. That's been missing for a while. And then they're also rolling support to a free plan as well for more countries soon. So they're going to get to the point of like free tier as well. Anthropic is known for their safety assumptions, etc. So that's why probably they didn't release it for a while. But hey, shout out to Anthropic for this. And I just want to say that we're at 2 hours and 20 minutes. We probably need to start closing down, but huge thanks for everybody who tuned in. The thing that we wanted to do for this week's Buzz and Weights and Biases, we're probably going to do next week. We're going to talk to you about the MCP server as well, but shout out to my whole team who worked on this, and we'll definitely cover that work. It's been an incredible show this week. Incredible show. So much open source, folks. Yama's back. OpenAI released 01 Pro, and now Whisper Killer, and also a new TTS they can prompt. We had daily. We had so many guests, incredible guests and friends of the pod. We had like Joseph from Roboflow talk to us about state-of-the-art models that they just released. He released it right here. Like we basically, Nistan had to go and like sleuth their GitHub for finding the links. I didn't even get the links before. So
it was 11 minutes that it had been updated. Yeah.
We actually are bringing you breaking news, not only discussing breaking news as well. And we also then talked with Quinn from Daily, covering everything the OpenAI released with open source and TTS as well. We almost got somebody from NVIDIA, and then NVIDIA PR said no. So NVIDIA PR, we're an amazing show to come and talk to your new models about open source specifically. So please send your people here. With that, I want to thank Wolfram. I want to thank Yam. I want to thank Nistan. Thank you guys for coming up and co-hosting this. Thank you for all our guests today, Lucas and Quinn and from Daily and Joseph as well. And thank most of all to everybody who tunes in and supports the show from multiple ways, by sharing with your friends, by giving us 5-star reviews, by subscribing to YouTube channel, folks. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. Please subscribe to YouTube channel. It's great. You'll get the pings when we go live as well. The best way to support the show is this. One comment that I shouldn't be triggered, but triggered me. We are not, when we will be sponsored, you will know. I will definitely, absolutely make sure that if we have a sponsor segment, you will know. The only sponsor for this show currently is Weights and Biases and our product called Weave, which is LLM experimentation, tracking, LLM observability and evaluation. And that tool I talk about all the time. That's the only sponsor. Everybody else is here because we think that telling you about them is a service to our community, and those are friends that we love and know they're doing great work in open source as well, including everybody who was here on stage today. With that, I want to wish you a great weekend, a happy Thursday, and a lot more AI releases until next week. Thank you everyone for coming up. And as always, if you missed any part of the show, it's going to be available on ThursdAI, that every place where you get your podcast and the newsletter. Leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.